Hey everyone, welcome back to Beat the Sheet, an Xbox Game Pass challenge. The only podcast aiming to complete every single one of the 494 titles that have been made available on Xbox Game Pass since the start of 2020. As always, I'm your host Andy Wood, and I'm joined by my co-host Josh.
Hello.
Hello. So, on this week's show, we create the universe in Genesis Noir. We are going out for a day at the theme park in our special feature this week. And we take you through all the highlights of the Idea Xbox Indie Showcase event without wasting 4 hours of your life, like some people did this week.
Oh, God, it was painful, wasn't it? Jesus Christ.
Oh, it really was, yeah. We'll definitely dig into that later, but how are you doing this week, Josh?
I'm doing okay. I'm gonna open up the show, as I like to do, with a message to Phil Spencer to say that, frankly, Phil, I'm sick of you trying to foist updates on your games, and every time I try to cancel your updates, you delete the entire game for me after I do that, which I found out today when I finally decided I'm going to play Gears of War 5 since I've got a few days. And then I had started to download most of the game. The game was downloaded anyway, but it had to install it for some unbeknownst reason. It had to install a download. I don't know how that even happens. So it needed to do that. And it was doing it. And then the football came on and I wanted to watch the football and my internet can't do two things at once. So I had to cancel the install. I didn't mean to delete the game, Phil. don't delete that. That game's 90 gigabytes large. Do you know how long that's going to take me? By the time I re-download it, I'll be playing whatever crap comes to leaving soon on Wednesday. You absolute cretin. Stop doing that. Stop forcing updates on me, you tosser.
I feel like you have so many problems that I never see. It's like Phil's just got like a board in his office that just says "screw Josh over," and then they all adhere to that rule in every situation. But that's rough though, man. I mean, 90 gig on your internet, you must be looking at a solid 2 weeks there at least.
And I really enjoyed the first 30 minutes of Gears 5. I was quite looking forward to playing it. Now I just hate video games again. I can't do it. I booted up all of 10 minutes of Ori and just went, what the heck I can't even play this anymore. So that's a no. Then I went back to Unravel and good God. That lasted all of 15 minutes before I went, no, can't do this either.
I was going to bring that up because I was looking in your games history, just to see how you're getting on with the games for this week's show. And I saw Unravel at the top of the list and I was like, what is wrong with him? Like, why? Why is he loaded up Unravel again?
I keep trying and I keep getting stuck with this stupid log and I can't figure it out. And I can't even bring myself to watch a video walkthrough for it because it's so bloody boring. Anyway, how's your week been? Better than mine, I hope.
My week's been all right. I'm very busy at work this week, so I'm not going to bore people with that. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of overtime. So then I thought, what would be a good type of game to play in the week where you have to do too much work? And what we settled on for this week was basically job games. So we did a nice feature on job games. So I did too much work, and then I've been managing theme parks and all sorts of different things like that. So just a busy working week, whether it's in games or in real life this week. But here we are. We've got some good stuff to cover this week. So hopefully this will be a fun show.
Let's get right into it. Okay, there have been 3 new additions to the Xbox Game Pass service this week, and they are Genesis Noir, Octopath Traveller, and Yakuza 6, The Son of Life. So, I think this is a damn good week of games right here. These are some good titles.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little to complain about here, isn't there? I mean, Yakuza obviously continues to just unleash all of the series on Game Pass, which is fantastic for everyone, really. As terrifying it is, to me, because I have to still play all of them. Octopath, that's a day one release over here on Xbox, so you can't really fault that. That's pretty great. It's the first time that's been available outside of the Switch, I think. So that's really cool. And then Genesis Noir, just a weird little indie gem that's appeared from nowhere. So I think that's a really it's a really well balanced week. I think it's as good as anyone can ask for, really.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. There's some big hours here. I mean, Octopath, you're looking at 60 to 70 hours. I've owned that on Switch for the best part of 2.5 years now and have never played it. Yep. So, of course, it's now come to Game Pass. That is the way of life. And Yakuza, everybody who's a long-term listener of this show knows how much I love that game series, but I am still only up to Yakuza 4, and I refuse to jump ahead in the story. So we're going to have to bide our time for thoughts on that one. But you've put a bit of hours into Octopath this week. Why don't you give us a little bit of indication of what this is like? This is meant to be a throwback to Square Enix's JRPG past, isn't it, in many words?
Yeah, exactly. You know, they're trying to kind of bring traditional like retro RPGs into a bit more of a modern era with this game, and you know they succeed in quite a lot of ways. I'd say for starters, the art style in this game is beautiful. They've went for this really kind of unique method of, you know, it's basically all the characters are just pixel art, as if it's a 2D RPG, but then. And even all the assets in the environment are all technically 2D pixel art, but it's all there's so much like depth to it. It's all in this kind of fully 3D setting. Looks fantastic. I would say as well, I played Octopath Traveller for about 10 hours on Switch, but that was sadly about 2 years ago. So I tried to pick that save up this week and it just wasn't going to happen. So I've instead spent some time with the start of the game again on Xbox. And it's weird because you wouldn't think it'd matter that much, but it runs at like a clean 60 frames a second on Xbox, and it makes it so much prettier. Like, I don't know why. I assume the Switch must run it at 30, but like everything's just so slick and clean playing this on an Xbox console. So happy with that. That's really good. It's got some fantastic music as well, which obviously is a pretty, you know, what you'd expect from a big Square RPG. So that's all good. Now the thing with Octopath is the way it's kind of trying to separate itself from your typical JRPGs is they've gone for this angle of having 8 different heroes, which is, you know, the Octo in the Octopath name. And you can basically start with any of them that you want. So you pick one at the start of the game, you do like a 40-minute mission to like learn who they are. And then your next goal in the game is to basically just travel to the other towns in the world and meet the other 7 heroes, and then you do their opening mission for half an hour and you learn about what they've got going on, and then you've got your full team together. And then after that it kind of just goes on that similar path, really. Like, all of those heroes then have like a chapter 2 mission on the map, so you can go and do the chapter 2 missions in any order, and so on. And eventually, in the end of the game, I think they all kind of properly come together into like a big climactic story event. Now, the issue with Octopath for me is because I didn't even remember why I dropped this a couple of years ago. I remember really enjoying it, and then I just stopped. So I picked it back up this time, thinking a similar thing. Really, I played the first few hours, and I was like, "This is great. This is really, you know, really good RPG, really well put together. You know, I like the characters. I love the look of it." And then I played a couple more hours, and I realized that the way they've committed to doing this story with the 8 individual heroes and the way you kind of go and do their stuff almost completely separately of any of the other characters, it's an absolute killer for trying to form any kind of enjoyable narrative in a game. That's like that. I'm really struggling with that in this game because, you know, it's like I said, you start the game off with one character, you spend half an hour learning about their origin, and then, you know, maybe that ends with them being like, right, I'm going to go and hunt down these like people who murdered my family. And then you just won't do that for about 9 hours because you'll go and do the first part of everyone else's story. And that's just like, it's really weird. It's like you're trying to watch 8 different TV shows and you're watching one episode of every single one before you watch episode 2. I can't get away with it. Like, I have heard a lot of good things about how it does come together in the end, though. So, you know, I don't want to put people off it too much. There is a lot of positives to this game, but that narrative structure is just a killer for me. You know, it killed me off 2 years ago, and it's kind of already killing me off again now.
I mean, this is kind of a weird thing in video games in general, isn't it? Particularly games which have a lot of side content. It can sometimes feel like you're playing the main character. He's got this big personal, she's got this big personal quest, and then they're buggering off doing random nonsense for half the game's runtime. And that's a little bit strange. If you multiply that by 8, you kind of get where I imagine your dissonance is coming from with the story here, because there's so much faffing about with everybody else that why would you stick around for this? Yeah. Why would you've got to avenge your family, and yet you're just pissing around doing somebody else's problem for them for the best part of 20 hours. You'd be like, what's going on here? So yeah, I completely get that as a criticism of the game. But one thing I did hear about Octopath, and one thing that a lot of people praise it for, is apparently has a very good combat system. Is that true? Apparently it's got an intricate way of doing its turn-based battles.
Yeah, you know, I think they do a good job of keeping it traditional without, you know, like this is a turn-based battle system. You know, if you've played a RPG from the 90s, you'll know what you're doing here. But at the same time, it does have some fun layers to it. Like, there's basically a system of every enemy will have like a kind of shield next to their name with a number on it. Let's say, for example, maybe it says 3 on it. And if you hit them with 3 attacks that they're weak to, they'll then kind of go into like a broken stance where you can do a ton of damage to them, and like they're stunned, so they don't take their attack that turn. So a lot of the game is basically about every time you meet a new group of enemies, they'll have like little question marks under the name, and each of those question marks will be a weakness that enemy has, but you haven't uncovered it yet. So you kind of spend your early turns when you meet a new enemy just trying all the different weapons you have. Like, you'll hit them with a bow, with a sword. Maybe you'll throw different types of magic at them, like wind or fire. And you kind of try to figure out what those weak points are so that you can exploit it down the line. And, I think that's pretty cool. And then it plays out quite well in boss fights as well, because typically the bosses in this game, they'll do that RPG thing where they kind of advertise to you that they're about to do some mad, massive attack. They'll be like, oh, he's charging up now. So, you'll have to like be careful. And, maybe you can just defend to not take too much damage. But if you've got them close to that breaking point, then you can just really try and lay into them to break their kind of stance or whatever it is. And then they won't do that by big, massive attack because they're stunned. So, there's a pretty good playoff there. And then also there's this element of you kind of every turn you have in this game, you get like a point of, I forget what they call it, but like effectively 1 point of like charge meter. And you can use that charge meter at any time to do like an extra attack. So if you just do one attack a turn for a few turns, then on your next turn, you can do like a really big charged up one that'll do like 4 hits instead of 1. So, there's a good playoff with that as well. You can kind of use that to rush that weakness shieldy meter down quickly. And yeah, there's a lot of layers. I mean, I'm just talking from the opening kind of 8 or so hours here as well. So, I'm sure as it goes on, it's going to add more layers to that too. So yeah, there's a lot of positives to Octopath. There really is. Honestly, the only real negative I have, as I said, is just that story issue. Like you play an interesting first act of someone's story and you will not get to their second act for about 9 hours. That's just too long. But other than that, everything else they've put here is really good stuff.
Yeah, it definitely looks like an interesting revival of the old school RPG. I mean, Square have tried to do this a lot. We've seen the trial like I Am Setsuna and a lot of other different sort of titles, and it's lost severe. It's never quite come together for them. And yet, seemingly, Octopath is the best version they've done of this yet. Like, this is as good as they've done it. Obviously, they've led this into Project Triangle strategy, which is very similar. We're all looking forward to that. So, I think this is a pretty cool title to come to Game Pass. Certainly for a JRPG to come to Xbox is now becoming more commonplace, which is quite cool. It used to just be you'd never get any. And yet now they seem to all be coming in with rumors that Square's going to be adding more and more games to Game Pass as well. So it could be looking at stuff beyond just the Final Fantasy series, which is fantastic. We want to get that history of their old RPGs on this console. Let's get a Vagrant story on here. Why the heck not? I'd love to play that. Let's see where we go with them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think obviously that deal they made initially a couple of years ago to bring like all of Final Fantasy to Game Pass, you'd assume that's going well for them. They're probably seeing a lot of renewed interest, particularly from Xbox fans for those series, because I think for the longest time Square have just assumed that Xbox players don't want to play these games. So hopefully now they're all in Game Pass, people are checking them out, and the fact that Octopath has shown up straight like day one into Game Pass tells me that they must be impressed by what they're kind of seeing from Xbox players and from the Game Pass platform as a whole. So that's all definitely good stuff. So Octopath then anyway, I have one last note for people, just a tip for if you started this game out. So as I said, you can pick one of these 8 characters. I would pick any of 7 of them. I would not pick, there's a hunter called, it's called like Harnett. Don't pick her. The way she talks makes me want to just turn off my games consoles and just run away from them. It's absolutely insufferable. Like, I don't know what they were doing, but they've make her and all of the people she lives with talk in this kind of old English, Shakespearean type way. But they've leaned so hard into it that honestly, like if you just read the dialogue on the screen, the natural voice in your head won't be someone in a Shakespeare play. It will be like Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. Like it just comes off like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like she starts every single fight, every single one. Like for reference here, I did start my game with Hana, and then half an hour later, I quit the game and started again with someone else because I couldn't take it. But she starts every fight by saying, "Let the hunt begin," right? But she doesn't say "Let the hunt begin." She says, "Letten the hunten beginnen." Like, what is that? So as I said, that's just Jar Jar Binks, right? That's all that is. That's not. Honestly, it's outrageous. Like every line, it's like, yeah, like everything has like F put on it or N. At one point, someone just said something I didn't even understand. To be honest, someone was talking to her, and he was just like, "Privy do not masters anta would the not hen." Don't know what that was. So yeah, don't start with Hana. Start with someone else. Maybe pick her up last. But other than that, it is worth a look. I think if you can get past the kind of narrative issues, everything else is solid.
And as somebody who only watched The Phantom Menace about a week ago, for no apparent reason, mainly just to see if Jar Jar was as annoying as I remember him, it turns out he is. Yeah, no, he was annoying. Yeah, I didn't. I always thought I was being harsh on him in my mind, but no, he does suck.
There you go.
There's the hot scoop of 2021 for you. Jar Jar Binks, still terrible. Anyway, let's move on to our next title. Another fantastic Japanese series, which has now almost made the complete jump to Game Pass, barring the most latest edition. Yakuza 6, The Son of Life. Now, it's kind of hard for us to review this. You've never finished a Yakuza game. You've at least played a bit of Zero. I've finished 4 of them, but I've obviously not got up to 6 in the story. So essentially what we're going to do here is tell you to play Yakuza 0, or I would actually say play Yakuza Kiwami if you haven't yet played a Yakuza game. Don't start with 6, you mad bastard. That's the worst place to start, even though Yakuza 6 is the most modern version of Yakuza in its traditional form available. It's got the new engine, it looks the best, it plays the best, it's got a lot of good stuff going for it, but it's also the culmination of 6 games worth of story. So it's probably not the one to start with. If for some reason you have played Yakuza's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and don't like the series, but want to know if you should play 6, why are you so strange? Like, you clearly don't like it. Stop playing them. So, it's a very strange review system for us here, but I'll let you just say what you like about the series in general, and then I'll say what I like about it. And then we'll just move on to happier times.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. I mean, I'm about 12 hours into Yakuza 0, and I do love it. Like, it's one of those games that I keep getting really into, and then we get distracted by, some really big new additions we have to play for the show, or like Leaving Soon throws like a Witcher 3 at you and you have to give up your entire 2 weeks to it. So I best intentions in the world from my end to play through these games, because I think it's been fantastic so far, but just very difficult to find the time. But yeah, Yakuza 0 and Yakuza in general, from what I can gather, is just a fantastic contained open world experience. It's like, it's an open world, but also you can walk from end to end in the setting in like a minute, and that's entirely fine because there's no filler. You're just in a really well realized small town setting, and that's kind of fantastic. And the game is just littered with fantastic uses for that small setting. Everywhere you go, you walk across wacky, nonsensical side missions that are like, I tend to skip a lot of side content in games these days because you largely have no choice, but I can't skip side content in Yakuza. If someone comes up to me to ask me to do a mission, I'm just going to do it because it's too fun. It leads to too much stupid, crazy stuff. And there's just no question in my mind that I'm going to do all the content. So, it's a bit of a spanner in the works when you're trying to beat everything in Game Pass to have that kind of attitude to it. But yeah, it's just a completely endearing, fantastic game series, and I can't wait to play more of it. And I think really the fact that, because for almost any other series that could come to Game Pass, if a later edition in that series got added, I'd just play it. I'd just be like, right, I'll play this and then we can talk about it on this week's show. But like, even from playing 10 hours of Yakuza 0, I can tell I want to enjoy this story too much for me to just jump into 6. Like, I can't do it. Not to Yakuza. I could do it to other series, but this thing, considering how fun it is, it's also got quite a lot of heft to it. The story is great, and you do care about what happens to these characters. So yeah, as I said, I only played half of 1, half of 0, if not even less, but I'm a fan.
Yeah, Yakuza is possibly the best gaming series on Game Pass. It's that good. It's an old-fashioned beat 'em up brought into the 21st century, and it plays so fluidly and it's so enjoyable. You use a lot of weapons in the environment to just rain blows upon the person who's come up to you in the street, just starting a fight. That happens all the time, and it's wonderful. It's just a great game. It's got a fantastic sense of humor. It somehow manages to balance these zany, ridiculous side missions with a very straight-laced, almost soap opera-esque main storyline. And that's a balancing act, which I, to this day, don't quite know how they do it. It's a borderline miracle that this game can be so silly and yet so ridiculously heartfelt at the exact same time. It's a heck of a trick. I don't quite know what they're doing, but yeah, look, Yakuza, fantastic game series. As I've said at the top, I'd start with Yakuza Kiwami, which is the it was the first game released but got a remaster, and then move on to Zero and then just play in order. But you could just start with Zero. I mean, these are just fantastic games. Play through them in either order you like. But for the love of God, do not start with Yakuza 6. Like, you might enjoy the game, but you're definitely not going to get the most out of it. But this is a great game to come to Game Pass. And anybody who has been playing along with the series, you know it's good. You don't need me to tell you. It's fantastic. Okay, let's move on to our main review of the week, though, and that is Genesis Noir. Now, this is a day one release into Game Pass. And when I read the description for this, a point-and-click, kind of like detective story set in space, I thought, I don't want to play this. This isn't what I want at all. And then Genesis Noir does the wonderful trick of being absolutely batshit bonkers and completely not that at all. This is one heck of a strange game, right?
I honestly, I've played this whole game and I still don't know what the hell it is, really. It's mad. Like, I don't envy the developers of this game because, they had to try and describe what it was. And as you said, they've kind of said that it's like I think they said something like it's a non-traditional point and click inspired game. And I guess it is kind of, but it's really not. I mean, I hate point and click games. I've covered that a few times on the show. And this is like 5% point and click to 95% whatever the fuck. Like, I don't even know. It's just it's crazy. It's a mad, crazy game, basically about the Big Bang and the creation of the universe, all told with a heavy focus on jazz at all times. It's if that sounds like it makes no sense, it's because it doesn't. But yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it's actually, I think it's well worth a look, though. I had some good fun with this.
Okay, so I'll try to describe the story and the general plot purpose of this game.
Yeah, that'd be good for me too. If you can, yeah.
Because it's a little bit heavy. Essentially, what Genesis Noir is a noir detective game. It is at its very core a noir story about a man who meets a woman who famously has some form of problem, some form of scorned lover, and it all culminates in her getting shot. And he comes in, bursts through the door at that very moment to see time slow to a stop, and all of a sudden, this big bang from his gun becomes a metaphor for the big bang of the universe. And we go on a journey with this detective through the entire creation of time. Now, that's bonkers, and I love it as a setup. It is also very well realized because the noir elements of this story never leave this game. It always feels like a film noir, which is a crazy thing to do when you're creating the planet. You're not, doing this famous, like, taking cigarettes and, chatting to dames. It's not really about that. But the feel of the game feels noir all the way through. As you mentioned, jazz is a recurring motif all the way through it. The woman you're trying to save was a jazz singer. And certainly the lead protagonist has a long history with jazz himself. And so the kind of motif of jazz then plays into the creation of the universe, all tied in a film noir package. If that sounds like it's dangling a lot of threads, it is dangling a lot of threads. It doesn't always come together perfectly, but when it does, this game really clicks at certain moments, and it feels like completely unlike anything you've ever played before.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely true. Like, I would say that, one thing this game does fantastically well is, you effectively jump into all these different instances, which are, documenting, as you said, the entire creation of humanity, basically, and the creation of the universe even. And as you jump into each one of those, the game will simply enough just do whatever the hell it wants. Like, you'll just do different, like, sometimes there might be like a bit of a puzzle focus, although it's never difficult puzzles. It's just kind of, simple logic stuff. The next one you go into, you might be walking around a kind of 3D world, throwing like items on the ground that morph the world. You might be planting seeds that make just crazy stuff happen for no reason. You might be in space. It's literally just anything can happen in each of these instanced parts of the game. And because of that, it never outstays its welcome. Like, nothing from a purely mechanical gameplay standpoint, nothing this game does is exciting and enjoyable, right? Like the actual individual pieces of gameplay, but the visuals around it and this confident style they've managed to achieve, which I can't even fathom how they managed to put this together from a production standpoint at times. Like, it's all just a crazy mess and it works, and I don't really know how. So, despite the fact that the gameplay is just small instances of kind of fairly basic activities, it doesn't need to be anything more, because you're really getting taken in by all the dressing around that as you play through the game anyway. So yeah, it's a really, really crazy game. I'm glad it exists. I think, it's nice to see just something mad from the indie scene again. This is what makes indie gaming so good. So yeah, it's just a wild time that I do think people should be checking out.
Yeah, I bemoaned on last week's show when speaking about Undertale that indie gaming had moved away from what I always hoped it would be, which is bold, singular, creative visions. You can't accuse Genesis Noir of being anything other than that. It is completely original. Its art style is just wonderful, a wonderful art style. It's kind of, the best way I could describe it is kind of like the old Wii game Mad World, taking away
Yeah.
all the blood, kind of just this black and white style. Everything is slightly elongated, which I love as well, and a slightly kind of rotoscope full way of animating it all. It's utterly bizarre. It's very hard to describe, but once you see it, you'll click with it instantly.
Yeah.
It's so rich in detail, is this game world. It's absolutely gorgeous just to exist within. The lead artists on this title must just be sick geniuses. Because I don't, like you said, I don't know how they made this. It's so fluid and it plays so well. And the art style lends itself to the more freak-outy kind of moments that this game does like to dabble in occasionally. It feels very loose. It feels like a bit of jazz music. The art style almost plays into the themes of the music itself as well, because the music in this game is wonderful, filled with small little jazz motifs. Occasional times where you do just go into a massive jazz riff session with certain characters. And I won't spoil the ending, but the ending just left me mouth agape. I can't believe this is even happening. I absolutely love it. It goes full psychedelic freak out, and I adore it for it, even if I wasn't entirely certain what was happening.
No, of course not.
You don't really need to in a game like this. It's not trying to tell you a cohesive story. It's trying to make you feel the story. And you always feel it. You know where you're going with it. In many ways, it fills into film noir tropes all the way through it. It feels like it's ticking off those tropes in the strangest way possible, in the most bizarre way possible. And it's so singularly weird that this is a must-play game if you have a Game Pass subscription. You may not love it. You may find it utterly reductive and you may find it a little bit pretentious, and I'd completely understand why people would. But for me personally, I got a heck of a lot out of this. I played this in 2 sittings. I could have played it in 1. I went to bed at like 2 a.m. I was tempted just to keep pushing on because I just wanted to see what weird gameplay mechanic they'd come up with next, because the way you do interact with this world is bizarre and it's a lot of fun. There's very few times it falls into repetition, which I think is a huge achievement.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think the thing with this game is like I kind of went into it pretty miserable, just from one thinking it was a point and click, and 2 just having a busy week outside of the show, and it won me over completely. Which it takes a good game to do that. If you go into a game and you don't feel like you're going to have a good time with it, that kind of, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas with Genesis Noir, like I said, it's just so crazy and wild, and you kind of don't know what it's going to throw at you next, to the point where it's very hard to not be intrigued by that and to be interested in what it's going to do. So yeah, I mean, I thought this was great stuff. My only real criticisms I have of this, and I think I differ from you a bit on this, but I found the run up to the ending in this game actually a bit too tedious. I think after you kind of finished all of the big, crazy, different elements of the creation of the universe, I feel like there's a segment of this game at the back end that just takes a little bit too long, and you do a lot of the same stuff kind of over and over, and that kind of annoyed me a bit. I understood why they were doing it from like a narrative perspective, but from a having to sit there and play it perspective, I was maybe a little bit done with about 20 minutes, half an hour to go. But other than that, I really don't have anything else bad to say. So I think this is great. I think everybody should be checking out in Game Pass. And I mean, I've gave this a 7 out of 10. I think it's real good.
Yeah, I like this game a lot. I just want to very quickly talk about what I think is masterstrokes of game design in this title, because it tells you nothing about what you have to do. And yet I was never lost at any point in Genesis Noir. I always felt like I had a grasp on what I needed to do, partly because the world it creates is a giant play box. It wants you to touch and interact with things and to see what happens and to continue doing those things. And it has little recurring motifs where, if some bubbles appear because you've drank some alcohol, because you're a detective in a noir piece of fiction, you need to pop them on the screen, and the chances are the next segment of the game will move on. The puzzles themselves, not radically difficult, but never brain-numbingly easy and never too taxing either. It's always asking you to play rather than to overly think. And I like that in a puzzle game. I like puzzle games that encourage the act of play rather than, sitting down with a notebook trying to work out what it's trying to do, a la something like Call of the Sea, which fell into that towards the back end of its runtime. So yeah, I think it does that really, really well. I agree that the back end of the story, it slows itself down to try to tell a more traditional narrative in the most non-traditional way possible because it's Genesis Noir, and of course it does. And you'll be left with the game going, I'm not entirely certain what happened, although you'll have enough of the feel for it. And there is definitely a correct ending, even if the game gives you a choice of two. And, do write in to tell me what you think that correct ending is, and I'll tell you either right or wrong next week. And yeah, I just like what it did. This was very nearly a 9 for me. I thought this was so unique and so bold and so different that I couldn't help but be swept along in it. But I think with a couple of days reflection, I just nudged it down to an 8. I think it does a lot right. I think there's a lot good here. And I think the studio who put it together could create something absolutely brilliant with their next effort. And I'm very excited to see what they do next. Indie gaming needs more devs like this. So please go out and support this game. Give it a download. Give it a play. It's all of 4 hours. You won't take long to do it. It's a heck of an experience. It really is.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Before we move on, I just wanted to give a quick PSA on this one, actually. Something just popped in my head, which is that on a couple of occasions in this game, I had some reasonably minor bugs. And I think if you know about them going in, you'll do better with them. So I had a few times where basically the controller just wasn't responding to inputs when I was like pressing A on stuff. And I found that you can totally fix that by basically just pausing the game and unpausing it. So, it's an easy fix, and I'm sure the devs are going to sort it out soon, but just something to keep in mind, because you don't want to have to quit out the whole game thinking it isn't working when you could just pause it and unpause it. So yeah, there's that. And also for people who need to be getting some achievement points to want to play games, this is an easy 1,000 points. So if that takes your fancy too, then this is a game to pick up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree on the pause thing that happened to me. Pause the game and it does tend to reset the world and whatever thing has happened. I had it right at the end, which killed the pacing somewhat. Just refused to spin the world. But anyway, yeah, Genesis Noir, great game. Do pick it up. Probably game of the week. Give it a try. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our leaving soon titles, which are leaving on the 31st of March. So that is this Wednesday. It may have already passed by the time you hear this. But there's only 2 titles leaving, and they are Hyperdot and Journey to the Savage Planet. We covered both these games last week, so we'd already reviewed these. If you want to hear our thoughts, do check out last week's show. I think it's safe to say the only one you should really spend time with at this point is Journey to the Savage Planet. 6 hours long. You could maybe squeeze through it. But I don't think either of these games are what you'd call a must-play.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you had more time, then Journey to the Savage Planet is a good game to play through. But, if you're catching us on the day these leave the service or even further down the line when they're not in the service anymore, then, they're not essential. Hyperdot is definitely not essential. But, Journey to the Savage Planet, I don't know. If it leaves Game Pass and you see a good sale on it, it's a fun way to spend 6 or 7 hours. But yeah, I mean, in general, it was nice to have an easy couple of weeks for us, really, with these 2 games. It's stuff we'd already finished, so nice to have a bit of a break from the leaving soon assault. But in a few days' time, there will be new games added to the leaving soon list, so we'll see what those are. Obviously, we'll be posting about them on Twitter the second we hear about them. So if you want to catch us on Twitter for that, then just find us at Beat the Sheet.
Okay, let's move on to our feature of the week. And we were trying to rack our brains to come up with something a little bit different for this week. And so we decided to jump into our most beloved of genres, the job game. Or as people try to sell it to you, simulation titles. So we thought, how could we put these together? And we thought, actually, maybe we could do something a bit like a day at the theme park. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get on the train in Train Sim World 2020. We're going to get to the theme park in Planet Coaster. we're going to slip on some vomit and need to go to 2 Point Hospital. So we're going to talk about each of those 3 games en route in a stupid little segment we call A Day at the Theme Park. Let's start with Train Sim World 2020. Now, some people would call this a video game. Other people would say that it is not a video game because it's the most tedious, boring experience you may ever experience in your life. And I think I fall somewhere in between the two. But God, who is this aimed at? Is my main question.
Yeah, I mean, I gave this game a score on the sheet that I have not gave to any other game, which I will reveal at the end of this segment. But yeah, I just don't understand why this is here is the real, sticking point. I mean, Train Sim World, it's exactly what it says it is. I guess I can give it that. This is a simulation of trains, but it takes that to the extreme, to the point where there's no attempt to make a game around it. I mean, the tutorial within the first 5 minutes literally puts you on a train. You sit down on the train, and the game is just like, yeah, you can sit on the train, you can pick one of the passenger seats, and you can just have a journey on the train and then get off at the stop you want to get off at. And I mean, okay, I mean, sure. I'll be honest. The first thing that struck me with Train Sim World when I did that is that, this is using authentic trains from the UK. So these are real trains, real train routes. And I got on that train, and I know that train because I used to commute to work on a train. I used to set off at about 4:30 in the morning and be on trains for a couple of hours to get to my first job out of university. And I was immediately filled with sadness upon the game making me bored the train that I'd spent so many early mornings on in a crappy job. And it's an authentic simulation in that way, because that's how I felt at 4:30 on those mornings. So I'll give it that. It's all there. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what this game is. You can get on the trains and ride them, or you can drive the train. And if Train Sim World is anything to go by, literally anyone can drive a train is the lesson I learned from Train Sim World. I mean, Christ, it's absolutely unbelievable how little this game requires of you as you, I don't even want to say play it is the wrong word, as you sit through it. It's mad. You literally, you make the train go, and then it gets up to speed, and then you just wait until you get to another station. And this is all in real time as well. So if anyone's thinking, oh, I'm sure that, it's minimized, sped up versions of the train route. No, you just do the whole journey. You just sit and drive the train in real time. And, maybe once every couple of hours, a signal on the line will go red and you'll have to stop the train for a minute. But other than that, you don't need to do anything. You just need to let the train go until it reaches the station. So, Christ, yeah. You got anything else to add to that, Josh?
I'll say that the actual concept of starting the train, and that's the main gameplay here. The main gameplay here is pushing the buttons that make the train go. That's essentially what you're here to do. You're here to push the buttons in the right order, push up that throttle, and ease your way out of the station, whilst occasionally sticking to the speed limit. I mean, sticking to the speed limit in a video game is the narkiest thing possible. But unfortunately, you do get points deducted if you go over the speed limit. So, buddy, you're going to travel at 50 miles an hour, whether you like it or not. I could also say that the main gameplay of this, the game launched with Great Western Railway, which operates mainly in the south of England. It does travel further up, but mainly it's operated there. And the route it gives you is London Paddington to Reading. I've done that train many a time. I've done it to go to the football at Reading. And I'll give it its due. That is the route to Reading. I can't take it away from it. I entered London Paddington Station and I went, this is London Paddington Station. I recognize it. Okay. And I got to Reading and I went, that's Reading. Yeah, there's the big steps into Reading Station. So if you're the kind of person who has always wanted to do that journey from the comfort of your own home because somebody hurt you and you don't know how to deal with it, then by all means. What I will say is, and my favorite part of Train Sim World was when I had a long stretch of track when I was just doing a morning shift from Paddington to Reading, and it required me to stop at no stops. So it was just a case of do the 35-mile journey to Reading, and it does not shorten it. That is very true. No. It does not shorten it. It takes as long as it takes in real life. And I just sat there, got the train into gear, and then just started playing my Switch like I was on a train. It was the strangest thing.
You might as well.
I just stuck my camera out the window and started playing my Switch. That's all you could do. Like that's the game, essentially. The game is a way for me to stop playing Game Pass and finally play some Mario games. In many ways, it's the invaluable tool I've needed all along.
No, that's fair. That is, you might as well. I mean, I had a thing with when I first played this, because, when you first come in, you think, oh, there's going to be, I'm going to need to do some sort of gameplay here, right? Like, it'll require something of me. And then I realized that, like, my Xbox went to the kind of, screensaver mode where it, like, fades out the screen a bit 2 times on my first route because I hadn't touched the controller in 10 minutes. So I was just like, okay, so I clearly don't need to be here for this. And then I was working on some achievements just before I wrapped it up and uninstalled it. And I was doing the, London Paddington to Reading route because that's the only route in the game. The game will lie to you and pretend there's more, but it's quite funny actually because you can pick a route off the timetable and it'll be like, oh, why don't you do this train, which is it's going from like Swansea to Oxford, and then you click into the route and it'll say in like smaller text, like that you're just going to do the London to Reading bit of that journey because that's the only thing that's in the game. And I just thought that was hilarious. You can buy more routes, but they're like 30 quid each or something, £25 each. So, good luck with that. But anyway, yeah. So when I was trying to wrap up achievements, I did one last train drive. I was in a big freight train going between London and Reading, and I literally just went out and walked my dog. Like I just made the train go, and then I went out for 25 minutes and walked the dog, and I came back and everything was fine. Like I was speeding, which meant I wasn't getting any points or whatever, but who could possibly care? Like nothing went wrong. Everything was fine, and then got back from the dog walk, park the train up, mission complete. It's absolutely ridiculous, the complete lack of anything you need to do in this game. I can't stress it enough. Like, nothing is required of you. It's absolutely insane. Yeah.
It's very strange, isn't it? I mean, I took a literal shit while playing this game because you can't. You could just leave it, go to the toilet, come back, and everything is okay. I feel like the game would be improved upon if you could add some of the more authentic British train experience to it. If you could have, passengers on the train who are on the route to the football and have had about 8 cans and it's not even noon. And you have to sit opposite them and not make eye contact as some form of mini game, or they will sin a chance about you. That would be quite enjoyable. You could add that in. At no point, I do love, and I will say this was my favorite thing, they booted me into a game and it said I had 2 minutes to make the train. The train was going to depart at 9:44 and I was the driver. And there was no run button to make the conductor get there any quicker because, of course, there isn't. He's a train conductor and he couldn't give a shit. He's going to make you wait on that platform till he's good and ready. And I was thrilled with that. I wanted a button so that I could walk on the platform and hurl abuse at people as they came out. I wanted that as well. I wanted to charge people for crap sandwiches, £7 gosh darn pounds for no reason. I wanted to, at some point, look at somebody's bag and go, do you think that should be on the seat? This is the train experience I wanted. But they've kind of stripped out the best parts of train travel and put it down to the boring bits when it's a good journey and nothing goes wrong. So I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity in that sense.
No, it is. People, surely whoever it is that wants this game, they want to experience the authenticity of riding on a train. So, like, fair enough, you can sit in a passenger seat and watch the train go. But as you said, where's the drunk people? Where's the family that have brought about 7 kids on the train and they're all just running around like psychopaths? Where's the table full of like young business marketing douches all talking way too loud about a presentation that they're going to do? Like, none of these people are here. It's just, it's a shame. They've missed the mark of the true authenticity of the train. So that's a shame. There's room to get a seat as well. You don't have to stand up crushed against the wall on the busy routes. That's one of the key parts of train travel in my experience. So that's gone as well. But yeah, look, I mean, this game's crazy. I mean, it's so focused on being a simulation to the point where, you don't do anything. There's a lot of stuff here that's impressive. As you said, the train route is the actual train route. The stations are the stations. The trains are so identical they give me sadness when I remember my commuting days. It's all there. Like the level of detail is impressive, and that's great. But you've kind of got to make a game somewhere somehow. And also, I just don't think a single 40-minute route between London and Reading is enough content. Like, as fully well realized as that route is, like, surely you need a few more routes. Surely, come on, it's just a bit ridiculous that that's all that's offered.
Yeah, it's just a strange game. I wish it did more. I wish it cut off my Wi-Fi on my phone and demanded I paid for it. I wish I had to queue for the toilet to get to my own toilet, and somebody would just be in there and they wouldn't get out. I'd love all of that. I'd love somebody to check my ticket and glare at me when I don't show them my rail card within 5 seconds. I want that experience. It's not there, but you do get to ride a train. And, you know, I tell you what, if there was a train version of this game which drove me past the Humber Bridge on my way to Hull, I would kill to do that journey in real life, to the point where I'd love to do it virtually as well. So, Train Sim World devs, give me the bridge. Give me the Humber Bridge, the greatest suspension bridge in the world. Don't at me, San Francisco. I'm right. We shit all over the Golden State Bridge. So that's my only criticism, but this is a weird game. I'd give it a 5. I don't know why. It's not really a game. So I guess I'll lead into what you scored.
Yeah, that's fair. As you were just a quick note, you were saying about the like if they had the Humber Bridge in it. I did notice when I went into the DLC for this game that they do have like my entire home train route, so you can go from like Darlington through to Stockton, Middlesbrough, and then you end up in like Saltburn, like just garbage level, trashy Northeastern Railway lines. Like, it's a horror show to be on them. But if that would have been less than £25, I might have bought it just for the novelty of seeing it. But anyway, yeah, as I said, I gave this a score, which is something I've never gave any game on the sheet. I scored this out of 10. Not applicable. I wrote NA because it's not a game, and I can't review not a game. I nearly gave it a 0, but I thought I don't have that level of hatred for it. It's just literally not a game. So that's what it gets. I'm sticking with it. It's just a not applicable out of 10.
And once we finished our train journey, we landed at Planet Coaster. So this is a theme park game in the old style.
Which is in Reading.
which in this case is definitely in Reading. Somehow. They've squeezed it in somewhere amongst all the yummy mummies and London commuters. They've squeezed it in somehow. And this is theme park. This is essentially theme park. The old game, I think it's even got some of the old devs from that series involved in this. It's a rebrand. It's a rebirth of this famous old franchise. Possibly the only simulation series I've ever actually enjoyed is theme park, because it's such a novelty of an experience. And I'll give Planet Coaster its due. I kind of like this game. I think this is kind of fun.
Yeah, I think Planet Coaster is real good. As you said, this has got some theme park devs on it. It's also got developers from the kind of height of the Roller Coaster Tycoon series. That's a series that's gone way off the boil now to an almost hilarious degree. But yeah, the people here are realistically the people who made all of the good old theme park games, whether it was theme park or RCT. So yeah, I mean, this is just really good stuff. It's everything you love about those games, just brought completely up to date. This feels like a modern game, which is a big highlight. A lot of simulation type games do struggle to figure out how to make their games kind of look good and feel slick to control. And, I think this achieves that, even with a controller, which is sometimes a very big challenge as well. I mean, I'd say if you had this on PC, that's still going to be the ideal experience, but you don't struggle too much on console. And also you can plug in a mouse and keyboard and your Xbox will just let you do that too. So yeah, I have a lot of good things to say about this one. I think it's real good.
Yeah, Planet Coaster controls pretty well, which is almost unheard of in console simulation games. Usually these things are just a nightmare to actually do anything with. But I found navigating the park and getting through the relevant menus to be a fairly painless experience. And the actual joy of building your park is great. It's the same as you always remember it, putting in the rides, making sure the queue's long enough, having enough janitors to clear up all the sick. It's got all that good stuff. And as you start to see the money come in and people get happier, and you've got all the bars and the graphs telling people what they like and what they don't like. So somebody will say, I can't get a drink. So you'll stick another drinks vendor down and stick another drinks facility down and solve the problem instantly. And it's kind of fun. It's a good gameplay loop. It never really gets boring. The money keeps ticking up, the happiness keeps ticking up, and you just kind of keep solving small little problems. This is a job. Let's not beat around the bush here. This is just work. But it's kind of fun work. It's quite rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, building a theme park would be a fun job. So, making a game about that job also quite fun. That's kind of fine. But yeah, look, I mean, yeah, this is really good stuff. One thing this game does do that is a real kind of highlight compared to a lot of the game, well, a lot of similar kind of simulation games like this, is it has an insane level of depth in the stuff you can create. Like, all of the this game gives you like a ton of pre-made things, whether it's like rides or roller coasters or even like scenery. And the scenery in this game is all quite active as well. You put down little models that are like shooting, or you put a big hole in the ground and a kraken comes out of it and does stuff. It's all things are actually happening with it. But also there's a whole section where you can build pretty much anything out of individual pieces to make your own kind of custom scenery, and then you can put that up on a kind of creation. There's like a creation platform built into the game, so you can go on there, you can download other people's stuff, you can get your stuff, and like it's really surprising just how much stuff in the game is technically, like you just see it as an option in the menu, but technically you could have built it yourself with the creation tool. Like all of the shops, for example, even like the signs on the shops, you can make your own shop signs that market that shop as a different type of shop. You can make your own custom menus for what the shops sell and the prices for it all. Like this game will let you go as deep as you want with that stuff, while also allowing you to just drag and drop pre-built items if that's how you want to play, and I think that's really good because it just kind of satisfies every type of player that this game might have. I mean, I've been doing a lot of the story missions, so I'm kind of, having pretty quick runs at different theme parks. So I'm not going to spend ages custom making perfect things right now. Whereas if I was in the sandbox mode, making something that exactly to what I wanted to make, then, it's great to have those options. So yeah, just really, really well put together package. And, when you do play some of those story missions as well, and you see kind of some of the pre-built stuff in the world that they've put in the park before you jumped into it, like all of that stuff you could have technically made yourself. Like it's madness and you wouldn't. Like some of them have like underground rides with like little holes in the walls where you can see them. And again, like stuff like big kraken monsters jumping out. And like, there's a limit to how much patience I have, but it's still kind of great to see that stuff and think like, Christ, that's actually possible. Like I could have done that if I really wanted to.
And of course, like all the games of this time, there is the downloadable store. So if you don't want to do it, some sick freak will, and you can just do it. They'll take their work, and you've got this endless parade of new rides and new facilities, just which you can just add in and add to your sandbox and add to your game worlds that you've created. And that's really cool. I mean, you're never going to do these intricate simulations on a control pad. That's just not going to happen. You need to get a mouse and keyboard if you're going to do that part of the game. But if you just want to have a casual experience, just downloading some cool stuff and placing it in your park, I think this plays really well on console. I will say there are slight issues, particularly with the roller coaster building. Like this game does give you a full suite of rides. You can just create anything, any roller coaster which you like. But good luck making one which doesn't make people want to die, because I could not work out how to bank into turns and do all of that. The game just gave me no feedback on what was going wrong. It told me it was wrong, but it didn't really tell me how to fix it. And that was just endless because I tried about 7 different variations of a corner, and every single time it'd go, well, I wouldn't ride that. And I'm like, well, tell me what I need. I can't do it.
Yeah,
it was very infuriating.
It's quite tricky because like they throw a mission at you early in the tutorial where they literally take you to a roller coaster test place and they get you to build one, and they give you like some specifications for, because there's an excitement meter, a fear meter, and a nausea meter, and you need to keep those within certain ranges to succeed in the tutorial. And I think the problem with that tutorial is that because you're not constrained by money or by type of roller coaster, like your inclination is just to build a big beastie monster roller coaster, and you do that. Like I got stuck on that tutorial for about an hour and a half because I couldn't get it to do what he wanted me to do. Whereas what I've actually found is that I then went on to build a roller coaster in one of my early theme parks in the kind of career mode, and I was restricted to like using this wooden roller coaster that can only go up and down by like certain angles, so it can't do like massive crazy drops. And because of that was actually quite a good way to learn about building roller coasters. It was better than the tutorial because I didn't want to waste my money, so I wasn't doing anything too wild. And also the wooden track itself wouldn't let me do mad, crazy drops and rises. So, it's possible to figure it out, but the game certainly could have helped a bit more on the journey, I think.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but once you do get to grips with it, you can do some crazy stuff, you can make some crazy fins, and you'll certainly need to as you go later into the career mode, because they're kind of implying that you're going to have to make this rather than just find a prefab version to drop in, which is not ideal for me because I still have not figured out how to make a roller coaster correctly. But this kind of feeds into another problem with the game, and it's any problem with a simulation type like this where you have to make money to create fins, is that when you start to lose money and you have nothing in the bank, you are in the shit. Because you can't arrest it because you can't hire anybody to fix the problem. You can't build anything to fix the problem. You've already got 7 loans. You can't take any more out. And you're just stuck in this cycle where this park is going to fail now. It's had it.
Yeah.
That's a business, to be fair. I can't fault. That's just what business is. But certainly at times you feel like you didn't even have a chance to turn it around before things just started to tank downwards, and there's so little you can do to fix it. When apparently your janitors, all 12 of them, refuse to pick up trash, and you're just like, why?
There's no upper limit to how many janitors is enough in this game, because apparently they won't do anything. Like I put bins everywhere, and I had about 12 of them, and everyone's just like, "This park's disgusting." I was like, "Pick it up! What are you doing?"
That's the thing, and that's when the job elements of this start to get me, because the game's like, well, you can tell them to do individual routes and where to go. No, mate, I don't. No, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to hire another 10 janitors, and we're going to fix this problem. There's more janitors in this park than guests at this particular point.
Yeah.
So that's a slight awkwardness. There's also the game uses scenery as a way to increase the prestige of its rides. So you've got a lot of cool stuff you can build in, lots of towers and different themes which fit into the theme of the park, be it fairy tale or space or whatever. And I found that putting in the cool stuff made little to no difference to the scenery meter. Just seemed to achieve nothing. And yet scouring the park with big orange bushes just rose that meter up before you do. Every single ride in my parks just had a string of orange bushes, not even placed particularly well. They didn't need to be, most of the time just on one side. And then I'd click on the ride and go, it's 100% scenery. It's as good as it could possibly be. And I'm like, I don't think it is though, is it? I don't think that is as good as it could be.
I think that kind of stuff's tricky, isn't it? Because like you can totally see why it has to work this way from like a gameplay design standpoint. Because like, they can't, there's no method for them to judge the quality of your setup of scenery, right? Like they basically just base it on how much of your queue is surrounded by scenery. So how much of the queue are your people looking at something? And they don't care if that's like an action scene with a bunch of pirates fighting, or if it's just the same shit bush you've put everywhere else in the park. Like they couldn't care less. And I guess in some ways that's like the only way to do it. Cause like, I guess it'd be weird if the game itself was criticizing your design of your park. But at the same time, I agree with you. I kind of like, as I did more challenges, I went from like, in the first parks, I was doing like pirate themed everything. It looked great. By the end, I just had this line of trees that were really good because they were in a straight line. And I just put that line of trees around every queue so that the queue would be 100% like happiness. And, I get why it's like that, but it's a bit of a killer. And yeah, as you said as well, that it's a problem with all these kind of games. But that thing where you end up on a losing cycle and you're losing money, it's a bit of a killer because there's very few things you can do to get out of it. It's sometimes you're lucky and you can go around your park and like see. You can click on every single ride and see how much profit it's bringing in every month. So like you might get lucky and see that something is actually costing you money because nobody's interested in going on it or something, and when you delete that, you actually start to maybe see your money come back up. But sometimes that's just not the case. You look around your whole park and everything's losing money and you're kind of screwed, unless you can take a loan out and then put enough new stuff down that you start making money. But I don't know. It's part and parcel of these simulation games. There's no other way to do it because that's the whole push and pull of the challenge of it. But it can sometimes feel like you're just stuck in a losing situation, and that is quite frustrating.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously that's frustrating. But the good thing about the game is it's got a fantastic sense of humor. The career mode is narrated by these 5 or 6 archetypal characters, all of whom are pretty funny, and they give you the information you need to work out how to, build a park effectively. It's got a good art style to it. It's very colourful. It's very pretty. All the rides and all the characters look fantastic. You can ride the actual coasters you both build and put down, which I kind of love doing. Love that completely. There's a lot to like here. There really is. It's got a fantastic song. It only plays one song, but the one song it plays is quite bombastic.
Yeah.
And gets me pretty hyped for Planet Coaster when it loads up. I'll give it that much.
No, I agree with that completely. It's a good little intro song. And even some of the rides as well, like the rides, you can pick from quite a large selection of like custom music to accompany the rides. And like most of it's just some kind of, generic rock music, generic something music. And then like just randomly, what's it called? Rise of the Valkyries is just in there for no reason, just because why not? And like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, as you said, I mean, presentation wise, this is great stuff. It looks fantastic. It does everything you'd want to see from a theme park building game, frankly. Like it has like it's weird because everything looks great and somewhat realistic, but it doesn't give up that cartoony aesthetic that I think theme park games thrive in. Like you want it to be full of vibrant, bright colors and you want it to, look exciting like that. You don't want a gritty, boring looking theme park with, a bunch of crappy rainy weather that looks miserable. You want it to look like an exciting place. And this game nails that. Even more so when it actually cuts to nighttime, because this game has somewhat of a day-night cycle. And a lot of the rides and scenery you put down have built-in ways of doing different stuff at nighttime. So they'll be covered in like vibrant, like flashing lights or just like neon or going around the area that the ride's been set in. And all of that is just, again, a great attention to detail that you didn't used to see really from anyone in this type of game. So, I gotta say, I mean, realistically, if you want to play a theme park game or maybe even just a simulation game in general, this is near the top of my list of suggestions.
Yeah, this is about as good as I've ever seen this genre. I think it's really enjoyable to play through. I liked it a lot. I mean, I have a certain limit of enjoyment when it comes to simulation games. As I've said, eventually, I just feel like I'm doing somebody's job, and that annoys me. And, and at times, the game has a tendency to, you found a winning formula, you put it on fast forward, and you just wait until you've hit all the objectives. And, then I might as well be back on the sodding train. You
could do with this on Switch, so you can do this while you're on the train. Really,
exactly. But I like this game. I'd give this a 7 out of 10. I mean, if you want this genre and if you want to play this, you could give this an 8 or 9. It's that good. It's just for me personally, it's probably not my genre, so a 7 out of 10, but good game.
Yeah, I mean, I gave this an 8. As I said, I think, it's really up there for the genre at this point. Like I think if you were going to play a theme park management game, I would say basically play this, or if you want to go for more of a like retro spin, then you can actually get like the classic roller coaster tycoon games on mobiles. That's pretty great too. But in terms of modern theme park stuff, this is pretty much top of the pile these days. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for me.
And so once you've been to the theme park and you've eaten a chili dog too many and your belly is grumbling and telling you should not have had that 7th chili dog, you may think you need to go to the hospital. You may go to 2 Point Hospital, which is the next game on our list. Sega's reinvention of Theme Hospital, a classical simulation game beloved by many. And 2 Point Hospital is the spiritual successor lots of people have been crying out for. I've not played much of this, but how did you find your experience with this game?
Yeah. So as you said, you've got to go to the hospital. So, you boarded the train back to London Paddington where 2 Point Hospital can be found. And there you go. 2 Point Hospital is really good. As you said, this is based on Theme Hospital, which was by the same people who made Theme Park. So great old management sim games. And 2 Point Hospital in many ways brings everything you would want about Theme Hospital into the modern day, really. I mean, I've played about 10 to 15 hours of this on Xbox, and my girlfriend's actually played a relentless amount of this on PC to the point where she's bought and completed all of the DLC hospitals as well. So I've seen a whole lot of 2 Point Hospital. And yeah, it's definitely a simpler game, I would say, than Planet Coaster. Hospitals are largely a more contained situation than theme parks. For one, you need certain rooms and certain facilities, you need certain staff, and that's about it. Whereas, for a theme park, you've got a lot more kind of room to be a bit creative maybe and change what you're going to do. But 2 Point Hospital it succeeds by just being a bit mad, basically. That's how this works, because hospitals themselves aren't immediately exciting and interesting, but Two Point Hospital is just full of people who have just hilarious, ridiculous illnesses, basically. And that's kind of how it works. You'll do an early hospital and someone will come in complaining of lightheadedness, and their head will actually be a light bulb. So then you'll have to build a room that literally unscrews their head and puts the normal head back on, and that's how they like get surgery and become better. It's just full of that. Like there's like about 50 different illnesses that are all like that have these like kind of stupid jokes attached to them, and then you make a crazy room to fix them. And yeah, those are all fantastic. And yeah, you just basically you're going to go through a career full of different hospitals that all do a pretty good job of changing up how you approach the game. Like early on, it's a pretty typical situation where you get paid by the people for the people come in and get diagnosed or have surgery. They pay you, you make money, build better stuff. Later on, you might find yourself doing like a university hospital where you only get paid in grants and you have to like train your staff and teach your staff to get money to come in. You'll go to one that's set on like a mountain where there keeps being like earthquakes or something. So whenever there's an earthquake, it destroys bits of your hospital and you have to get someone to fix it. The DLC stuff's mad. I won't go too much into that because it's not in the core package, but the DLC has stuff where like one hospital is actually the set of a hospital TV show. So you've got to work around the people filming the TV show. One takes you back into medieval times and you can only do medieval like medicine and things. There are a lot of really clever creative ideas in Two Point Hospital, I would say. And it's really, really good to play. I mean, I enjoy it a lot. I would say it has that problem that we briefly spoke about on Planet Coaster, which is that sometimes you just figure out a basic winning formula and you just reiterate that across a few different levels. Like by the time you get to the end of Two Point Hospital, for the majority of the hospitals, you'll kind of have a rhythm in mind of like, I'm going to make these rooms, they're going to be this big so I can fit this stuff in them. If this problem arises, I've already dealt with it in previous hospitals, so I know exactly what I'm going to do. Like you'll eventually get into that routine and that rhythm after a good half of the hospitals in the game, maybe. But I don't know if that's even really a problem. I think a lot of people play these games for that kind of relaxing nature of just comfortably managing whatever it is, whether it's a theme park or a hospital. So yeah, I think Two Point Hospital is really good. I think it's about as good a representation of theme hospital as you're going to get.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be a pretty popular title. Fans have taken it to their hearts. I guess as a quick PSA on this one, we know that Two Point Hospital joined Xbox Game Pass the best part of a year ago now. And anybody who follows it will know that after 12 months, games have the potential to start getting ready to leave. So if you did want to play this game, maybe now is the time to pick up on it. I'm pretty certain it joined in February 2020. So, we are well past that time. So if you want to get into it, give it a go now. But this is by all means just very good representation of the hospital, which you could want. And it does it in a silly, funny way. It's not trying to be anything particularly serious or heavy, which, it couldn't be. You don't want to be playing like ER. You want to have something silly and dumb, which is good. And it does that effectively. I mean, Game Pass has a lot of simulation titles for some unbeknownst reason. We nearly did an entire list of them this week. There's about 10 we had on our list, and we thought better of it. But, this is one of the better ones, I'd say. I think this is up there as probably just as good as Planet Coaster. As my girlfriend's played this game as well, seems to absolutely love it. So, yeah, I'd say if you want to have a trip to the hospital, this is about as good a representation as you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. I'd love to see more from these guys. I'd like to see them make a sequel. I just think, as I said, it's a fantastic game, but you do fall into those familiar patterns after playing it for, we're talking like 10 or 15 hours before you get completely comfortable. But, nonetheless, I'd like to see a more expanded sequel. I think they've got a lot of talent here. And yeah, it's just good to see these genres coming back. There was a weak sort of decade, frankly, for these kind of games. Like all the Roller Coaster Tycoon games sucked. Nobody's tried to make Theme Hospital really at all since the late 90s. So I don't know. Glad to see this little resurgence of good quality games like these. Maybe a bit less train sim. Don't need too much of that. But for the other two, it's nice to see them come back. So anyway, based on my time with Two Point Hospital, I would give it a 7 out of 10, I think, at the moment. I think it's, a touch under Planet Coaster, but still really, really good.
And at this point, you'd probably get back on your train for 45 minutes and just place anything other than Train Sim World 2020. I think that's the main thing we stress from this particular feature.
Yep, that's pretty much it. So yeah, we hope you all enjoyed your day at the theme park. All right, then. So, as always, we're going to close out the show with this week's gaming news. So, the big news this week really was the Idea Xbox Twitch event, which was on Friday the 26th. And, you know, they kind of build this in a strange way. We spoke about that last week. They sort of said there'd be like 25 Xbox indie games to be announced and a lot of Game Pass stuff, but then also said there'll be over 100 games, which made no sense at the time. And yeah, you know, so the event came around and we both got ready to you know, really dig into it, really watch it, get all our notes ready for the show. And then this event was just a strange old thing, wasn't it, Josh? This was about 4.5 hours long. And I mean, I would, if I'm being generous, I'd say maybe about 40 minutes of it had useful content. That's I don't know, man. This was a weird format. I don't know if I should have saw it coming because it was a Twitch thing, so it was going to obviously be more streamer focused and stuff like that, maybe. But I don't know. I this was very weird.
Yeah, this is very strange. I don't want to be too, you know, stones in glass houses with us doing a literal video game podcast where we just talk nonsense for a couple of hours. But I've never really watched Twitch. I've never really got it. And on the basis of watching these really boring people talk for the best part of 4 hours, I have no idea why anybody else is. Because good God, this was tedious. It's like, I know that it's nice to involve streamers and to think they can interview people, and that's great. But every single interview segment in this show ran about 25 minutes too long, and they were all about 25 minutes long. It was just painfully dull. Like, game developers are wonderful people, humanly, beautifully talented. We love them dearly. But they're not the most interesting folk in the world. You don't radically have to speak to them for 25 minutes about your pixel art game. There's not that much to say. It's just bizarre.
I mean, that's it, right? Like, I love, obviously, love indie gaming, love indie developers, you know, fantastic work they do. And even like, you know, typical Twitch streamer stuff, you know, I've watched quite a bit of Twitch and there's some great stuff on there. And so all of that's totally fine. My big issue with this was that, you know, if I'm going to listen to like a sit down interview for half an hour with a developer talking about a game, the only world where I'm going to want to do that is for, you know, an influential name, a Kojima, a Miyamoto, like someone who has a real, you know, had a real impact and has real kind of high level thoughts on gaming designs and the gaming industry. Like, I can't sit and listen to separate half an hour interviews about just some indie game that's coming up. You know, it's just, and it's a disservice to the games as well, because I think indie games show best when, you know, you see a trailer that catches your eye, you get a release date, and then it comes out and you play it and you experience it. And that's how people form like positive relationships with indie games. They don't form them by listening to someone be asked about every tiny element of their game for half an hour. Like, that's an absolute killer. I mean, there was a game in this, which we'll get into it later. We're going to cover all the games that have been announced for Game Pass from this. But there was a game called Moonglow Bay, which is like a kind of fishing game. And, you know, the game itself looks like it'll probably be fine. It might be, you know, pretty enjoyable. I like fishing in video games. But they spent half an hour asking the developers every single minuscule aspect of the game, to the point where I started to not want the game at all, just from being like, I can't believe you're like putting me through this. Like, and that's not a knock on the developers at all. You know, they've worked hard on something. They've, you know, had a vision. They've succeeded in it. That's fantastic. Like, it's incredibly difficult to make independent games. Like, again, not a knock on them in the slightest, but nobody needed half an hour of talking to some developers from Moonglow Bay. It's just not, it's not content people needed, you know. It just contributed to this bloated event that, as we said, like 4 hours long. I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, you know, anything like this, if you actually want people to watch it and take away some of the games you've announced, you want to make sure that it's front-loaded with news and reveals, all the trailers you have. And if you do want to spend 3 hours talking to the developers and the dudes at Xbox, by all means do that, but put it after the show. Don't, like, hold the trailers hostage between these tedious interviews where everybody has been told they need to fill a certain amount of time, and everybody has basically asked all the questions they wish to after 5 minutes. I mean, even the best interviewers in the world will struggle with a 30-minute interview. And that's with an interested person. That's like with a celebrity or somebody famous, not just some dude with an indie game. That's tough time to fill, man. Let me tell you. If somebody comes up to me and says, "Do you want half an hour for an interview with bona fide celebrities?" I go, "That's a bit long. I'll take 20, thanks. That's fine." Yeah. So I don't understand how it happens.
No, that's exactly it. That's the thing. Like, again, all the respect in the world for everyone involved on an individual level. The streamers, they did what they were told to do. The developers are all making cool games. But this event was just, it failed at just a conceptual level before it even began. This was designed to fail. I mean, I remember I was looking in the chat window as this was going on, and it was just full of people just saying, like, where's the trailers? What is this? Like, well, because everyone was there. You announce an event and you say you're going to have 25 Xbox games or 100 games or, whatever confusing messaging they wanted to deliver. And people expect to see a bombardment of games. They don't expect to spend half an hour talking about a cooking game that's coming up. It's wild. But, but we've done the hard work. We've dug through. We've gathered together the list of games that are coming to Game Pass, and they're all coming this year as well. So I guess that's the silver lining here is you can listen to us guide you through these games and not watch 4 hours of basically nothing. So that'll be nice.
That'll be nice. And there's some good games here. We'll take them alphabetically, as has been announced by Xbox themselves. There's 22 games here, all coming to Game Pass this year. Some pretty cool titles amongst them. Let's kick off with Art of the Rally. Now, this is unsurprisingly, a rally game, and it seems to be gaining rave reviews from places all over the internet. I've seen a lot of positive hype for this game. A lot of people have played it on PC, and to be fair, it looks pretty good. Got a very interesting art style. Looks pretty meditative in the way that it's going about the driving experience, and it's quite a beautiful little game.
Yeah, I love the art style of this, right? It's like a low poly kind of simple art style, but it looks pretty beautiful. There's a lot of color to it. And basically you go through rallies from the past up until the modern day. I think you kind of start in the 60s and you do an event in the 60s and then you do events in the 70s, 80s, and it kind of goes through. Obviously the cars change as you go through that. And yeah, it just looks like a great time. As you said, it's well received on PC. I think like its average review scores up in the 80s, so that's obviously real good. And yeah, I think it's something to look forward to. I've heard that apparently the driving is actually deceptively simulation heavy. This isn't an arcadey racer, which was a slight disappointment to me. It had to be said. I was hoping this would be something where I'd be kind of whipping that car around the corners a bit, but apparently it's a pretty serious racer. You have to take this one pretty seriously, despite its more kind of relaxing visuals. So definitely want to keep an eye on. It's one to not sleep on when it shows up. But yeah, I'll be interested to see if I can get away with that driving.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame that they've gone for a more simulation approach because Dirt Rally is kind of already doing that. I feel a lot of people are talking about how this is a very unique game. It's a rally game. And I think not many people play them. So the idea that you're driving against yourself has amazed some people, despite the fact that's just what the sport is.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it looks like it's doing it well. It looks like a good version of it. I am looking forward to playing this. This is definitely a good little level of hype for me on this one. I think this looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the next game, though, which is Astria Ascending. Talking about games with a bit of hype about them, a bit of pedigree about them. We've got people involved in the Final Fantasy series here. We've got the composer from Final Fantasy 12 and the writer from Final Fantasy 10 and 7 Remake involved in this title. And what they seem to have put together is a game about a woman with very, very tall legs.
Yeah, yeah, they have. And apparently what this game is basically a side-scrolling 2D RPG where it's all about melons, I think, by the looks of it. There's something called melons, which are clearly fruits, so they're just melons, but I think they're meant to be like harmony melons. And everyone needs the melons to live. And there's some bad guys show up and they're going to try and take the melons. So don't know where the hell this came from the writer of Final Fantasy 10 and 7 Remake, but this is what we've come up with. Yeah, look, I mean, this looked pretty wonky at the moment. I thought the animations looked a little rough, little plodding. But that's some really good pedigree on this project. So, you should be getting a fairly decent story. You should be getting some great music. So there's going to be positives to this. From our perspective, we have to have a bit of a cynical view because we have to beat all of Game Pass. And this is apparently a 30 to 50 hour indie JRPG. Like that's a kind of a killer for us. That's not what we need, especially in a service that has a bunch of, big Final Fantasy titles and stuff like that. It's already a lot of RPG to get to, but nonetheless, it's one to keep half an eye on. I think I'm not overly impressed by what we've seen, but I am impressed by the people involved.
Yeah. I wasn't massively hyped by the trailer. I thought it looked okay. I thought it looked a little bit generic, but the talent's there. There's plenty of cool little ideas they seem to be having. I don't care for the character models. I joked that the lead character was about 80% leg, and she seems to be. It's just a bizarre character model. I don't get it at all. But, it looks decent enough. Good pedigree. Let's see what happens. But 50-hour JRPG, that just sets the Warden Light software there, doesn't it? That is killer. Let's have a look at our next game, though. This is Backbone. Now, Backbone is a detective game where you play as animals, which seems to become the kind of like the hot thing in indie gaming at the moment, is to just do a normal game, but do an animal. So this is what this is doing. So this time it's the role of a raccoon. It's raccoon time in the big roulette wheel of animal indie choices.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, 2D pixel art game, noir detective stuff as a raccoon. The art style is nice. This has a really cool kind of, like the characters are all 2D pixel art, but there's a level of depth and 3D to the world. That's pretty cool. It looks like it's got a bit going on in terms of gameplay. I was initially obviously worried that this would just be a point and click game, but the relatively short trailer that we've seen, that kind of showed the character running and jumping across buildings and kind of hiding behind stuff to like wait for guards to go past. And that all looked like actual active gameplay rather than point and click stuff. So, I'm intrigued enough. I think this could be a fun one to beat and cover for the show. I hope it's a reasonable length. Like, I think, it looks like the kind of game I could enjoy for like 4 to 6 hours. So, hopefully that's kind of range we're seeing here. But yeah, it hasn't put a lot of feet wrong at the moment. We'll just have to see more about it, I think, first.
Yeah, I think this looks pretty cool, to be fair. I do like a good detective game. I do, for some reason, like anthropomorphic characters in fiction, for some unbeknownst reason. Yeah. I've fallen into my own thing I'm criticizing. But yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. Set in a dystopian Vancouver, which is a cool setting for a video game. Like that a lot. Yeah, let's see. I'm actually looking forward to this one. If it does outstay its welcome, I think this could actually be a pretty decent time. Okay, so the next game we've got is Boyfriend Dungeon. Now, I think it's no exaggeration to say, I think this is the best game coming out from this 22 games. I think this has a genius idea.
Oh, yeah, this is absolutely mental. So, yeah, Boyfriend Dungeon is a dungeon crawler, but it is also a dating sim / visual novel game. And, all of the weapons that your character has that she takes into the dungeons all transform into just hot guys when she's not in the dungeon, and she just dates them and gets to know them. And as she gets to know them better, they kind of love each other more, and the weapons become stronger. And yeah, I mean, that's Boyfriend Dungeon. Sounds mad. Sounds absolutely mad. I think this will be a fun one to cover for the show. I'm quite looking forward to it.
Oh, can't wait for this. What a great idea to level up your weapons by dating them and falling more in love with them. That is fantastic. I'm going to date so many hunky boys in this game. I cannot wait. This is going to be fantastic. Can't wait for this game. Bring it out now. I want to play it now. It sounds so much fun.
That's fair. Like, to just put a quick tiny damper on Boyfriend Dungeon before we move on, I would have to say that the dungeon crawling looks competent at best. That's my only problem. It looks like it's enough to get me to the dating sim part of the game again. But nonetheless, yeah, crazy, wacky idea. Again, type of stuff you want to see from indie gaming.
Yeah, love the idea. Let's move on to our next game, and this is Craftopia. Now, Craftopia is the answer to the question, how many gameplay elements can you cram in one video game before somebody goes, maybe we should stop? Because even just in this game's blurb, it describes that it has hunting, farming, hack and slash, building, automation. I saw a little bit of almost like roguelike structure in there. It's got everything in it. It's got crafting in it as well. It's full to the brim. Looks like Pokemon.
Yeah, this game's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I watched a pretty lengthy bit of gameplay on this because it's in early access at the moment anyway. And yeah, it's like, so basically it looks like Breath of the Wild. You even have the exact same glider that Link has in this, where he glides around and stuff. The character they used in the gameplay video I watched had like clothing on that looked curiously exactly the same as Breath of the Wild Link's kind of blue armor. That's very intentional, I'm sure. But then beyond that, yeah, it's got some proper action combat. The combat looks like a kind of a hack and slash really, rather than something simpler. So that looks pretty good. You got some crafting. You've got tons of farming. There was a few bits that I saw in the gameplay thing where the farming looked bleak, man. There was one bit where there was just like two massive conveyor belts with about 100 cows on, and the conveyor belt was just guiding them to a massive bowl of lava to just cook all the cows, I guess. And then there was loads of hamster wheels with different animals running in the hamster wheels to generate power. And it just, yeah. So, you can abuse and take advantage of all kinds of animals if you want to. But then even beyond that, there was bits where they were driving tanks around. They were doing snowboarding and hoverboarding. They were flying a plane. Like, I mean, Christ, this game is full to the brim of pretty much everything. Like, I can't fault their ambition. It seems like it's basically Monster Hunter, Breath of the Wild, Stardew Valley, all rolled into one somehow, and it looks pretty nice. It looked a little rough around the edges in some places, but when you're trying to make 50 games in one, that's probably going to happen. Yeah, just a wild package. Probably good for some people that's coming to Game Pass. I would say I'm strongly hoping this doesn't have a story so that we can just put a nope on the sheet and not have to beat it, because it seems like the kind of game that would take about 500 hours to beat.
Yeah, I have absolutely no excitement or hype for this game. It looks like a jumbled mess of ideas that the developer seems to like a lot of different things, and that's nice. I like kebabs and I like strawberry ice cream. It doesn't mean I put them together. Sometimes things need to stay separate. And I feel like Craftopia, I beg that this game does not need to be completed, because I have literally no hype for it. I don't have a lot of hype for our next game, which is Dead Static Drive. Now, This is a top-down kind of survival game where you're in a car, there's some freaky dudes trying to kill you, and you can either shoot them or run away from them. I don't know, man. This looks a little bit bland to me.
Yeah, I initially saw this game billed as a survival horror game, and I spent a bit of time watching a bit of gameplay on this one, and I got to say, it's not really survival. Like, I think, you say survival horror to me, and I'm thinking, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, it's not that. This actually looks a lot more like it plays the same as State of Decay, basically. Like, you drive a car around a city, you stop into different buildings to like loot resources that you're going to need to survive for longer. You build kind of I think you can get like a base camp area that you'll fill with supplies and stuff to defend it. And, maybe there's a story there. I'm not too sure right now. That hasn't been made clear, but that gameplay loop is just State of Decay. It's a more of a crafting survival game that just so happens to be about monsters. It's not survival horror. So I don't know. It's going in a pretty interesting visual style. There's a couple of monsters that I saw in the trailer that looked particularly creepy, but I'm not filled with excitement for this one.
No, I echo your thoughts. I think some of the monster designs look pretty cool. I think the general art style is kind of fun, but I just don't look at this game and see anything which is massively grabbing me. As you say, it's very derivative of State of Decay, and State of Decay isn't even that good. So maybe if this is a good version of State of Decay, then we'll actually go in somewhere. But I don't know. I could happily skip on this one. Not that I have any choice. Let's move on to our next title, which is Edge of Eternity. Now, this is another JRPG, which almost threateningly said in its early access trailer that there's already 30 hours of gameplay, as if it was trying to annoy me. So God knows how much it's going to have by the time that it finally launches. This looks fine, but let's be honest, it looks a little bit generic.
Yeah, my issue with this one is that you can clearly see from the way they even show the logo with the Edge of Eternity words, they do it as if it's Final Fantasy. Like, it has the same sort of style, the way they bring the logo in and fade it in. It's all Final Fantasy. This game clearly wants to be Final Fantasy. The world looked like a kind of approximation of Final Fantasy 15's world, but then also this game has space and spaceships as well. I don't know. It looked okay, but it's one of the things that I struggle with sometimes with indie gaming, where they've clearly got a small team, that are all working hard. I'm sure they're all great developers, and they seem insistent on trying to go for a AAA level of quality with the game, and they just can't, right? There's not the budget or the staff to do that. So this game kind of comes off looking like it's trying to look like a AAA game, but then the animations in particular completely give up the ghost on that one. Like whenever people talk, the mouths just move in random, undetermined ways that have nothing to do with the speech that's being said. And like because the rest of the game is trying so hard to look like a modern 3D game, that jars so much worse than if they just went for a more indie kind of stylized approach to the game. Like it really, really threw me off when I saw footage of this one. So I don't know with this. It's really tricky sometimes because indie studios and indie developers, they can achieve certain things that big studios can't. They do have their strengths, but you've got to play to those strengths. And this to me just looks like a small team trying to copy AAA style gaming, and that's the worst type of indie to me. So yeah, I'm frankly worried about this one because, it's going to be a big long RPG that we have to beat, and I don't have a lot of excitement.
Yeah, it doesn't leave me particularly excited. It seems to be doing a slightly more strategic bent on its turn-based battles, which I suppose I like. It's got a grid-based system where you need to position your character effectively to, get the most out of fights. That might make them slightly more engaging than the traditional turn-based fight, which certainly in the later hours of JRPGs just descend into doing the same thing over and over and over again. So hopefully that keeps it fresh. It's going to have a soundtrack by the Xenoblade Chronicles composer. I suppose that's cool. That music's good. But, you can always tell that if you're trying to pull names out of the hat, the composer is not usually the big name I'm looking for, even though I'm sure the music will be very good. But as you say, not hugely hyped for this one. But I am considerably more excited for Edge of Eternity than I am for our next game, which is Hello Neighbor 2, which I could only describe as absolutely not. Nah, not for me.
Yeah. My first note on this one just says, please, God, no. So, yeah, I mean, look, Hello Neighbor 2 clearly is just the same shit game as Hello Neighbor. Like, that's what this is, right? It's the exact same game. They kind of tried to add to it this time by being like, oh, you're gonna like interact with the other neighbors in the town. It's not just the big bad main neighbor man. Like, all right, sure, I guess. I have no desire to do that. I don't care about doing that, but sure. Yeah, I mean, it's rough, man, because Hello Neighbor is objectively a terrible game, right? It reviewed awfully. It's awful to play. I tried to get through it because it technically does have an actual beginning and end point. I wish it was a Nope game, but it's not. And it's an awful game. But the problem is because it's a bit crazy and has like meme potential, it was quite successful. It's done well for itself. There is a world full of gamers and streamers in particular that are very excited for Hello Neighbor 2 because it's a good content generator, right? It creates funny content for people to see. So these games will continue to be successful, but they are bad games. They are awful to play. There's no enjoyment to be found in playing them. And frankly, like one of the things that frustrates me the most about Hello Neighbor is they actually have some really cool AI tech in this that they show off often. They have this AI where the man in the house learns from what you do. And they kind of showed that off in quite a cool way where they showed that like, in the early iterations of you going around his house, he might remember little things that you've done, but then eventually he really gets switched on to what you're going to try and do. So, you might hide in a particular cupboard and it's the first place he'll check because he knows he's found you in there like 10 times before, and that's really cool, clever tech. And I would love to see that put in use for a good game. It's a shame it's stuck in Hello Neighbor.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And so this tech is interesting. The problem with anything like this is where there's only so many ways around the room. What that tech is eventually going to descend into is which one have we been doing the most at the moment? That's the one we now can't do. Now we just need to do the other two. So it's just going to be a case of switching which way you do it. There's only so many ways you can escape the stupid room. It's not like it's got 700 doors or anything, So the actual AI tech is cool. It is clever, but eventually after a few months, even that's going to get limited. There's only so many times he can relearn his own AI to go do the other thing this time. Like Hello Neighbor, it's not massively my kind of game. I get that it's got meme potential, and I'm sure some people get some joy out of it, but I'm hoping beyond hope this is just a multiplayer focused experience, so we can just completely fob this off to the nope section, as I so wish we could do with the first one. It's absolutely gutting that we can't. But I can't say I'm hugely hyped for this. I tell you what I am hyped for. The absolute bonko nonsense which is coming up next. Library of Ruiner. Now, I watched an 8-minute trailer for this game in dubbed Japanese, and it was brilliant. I have no clue what the heck this is.
This, in a week where we've covered Genesis Noir, this is the most crazy game that we're covering this week. Like, it's absolutely insane. So Library of Ruiner basically is you play as a owner of a library, and you guests come to your library and you have to defeat them to turn them into books to put in the library. So you just kill the guests and they become books, and then you grow the library by doing that. Apparently, you can hire librarians that'll fight for you. They'll join you and fight the people, turn them into books. And if you get some good books, then those will entice more guests to come in that you can also turn into more books. Apparently, when you beat someone in a battle, you can either like take the book and have that person, or you can just burn the book and get some sort of skills from the book and use them for other characters. Like, I think the battle system's got some kind of turn-based thing with cards, the elements, but I think it's more skills that you pick from a set of options. And I mean, what is that? It's the most insane game I've ever heard of. Apparently, your quest during the game is you're trying to find I think the game just bills as the perfect book. Apparently, there's one perfect book, and you need to grow your library to get the person to show up that becomes the book, and then beat him up and put him on the shelf. So yeah.
I mean, that is what you call a plot pitch and a half.
Yeah.
That is just wonderfully bizarre. I watched this trailer with this character introduced, I think it's called Roland, and he's just this depressed, sad man who's just talking to this librarian who's somehow crippling his limbs via books. And nobody knows how. It doesn't make any sense. Everything is absolutely strange. And the actual combat, it's done in this quite gorgeous little just normal art style. Yeah. And then the actual fights are these 2D kind of top-down tiny sprites which are attacking each other. And it's really bizarre. It's completely separate to what the actual game is for most of its run. It just looks absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the plot synopsis makes no sense. This 8-minute trailer I watched made no sense. I absolutely cannot wait to play this because I have no idea what it is. I imagine it's going to be terrible. I can't wait to play it. That is the main thing I took from this. I'm pretty hyped for this game. It looks pretty mad.
Yeah, no, I echo your sentiments exactly. I don't think it's going to be a particularly good game, but it's going to be interesting. It's another one that's going to be an exciting week on the show when that comes around.
Next title is Little Witch in the Woods. Now, basically, this is Stardew Valley, but you're a witch. Let's be honest, that's what this game is. It's got a lot of crafting, it's got a lot of town building elements, and I'm sure it'll be lovely for a certain type of person who wants to do that. That person is not me. I am not that guy.
Yeah, that ain't me either, to be honest. I mean, I've bought Stardew Valley on, I think, 2 different machines now, and I've never so much as turned it on because I just know I don't want to play it. I know it's critically acclaimed. I know it's real good. Not for me. I don't want to. It's a job game. I don't want to do farming. And yeah, this is just the exact same thing, except for you're a witch. You go out, you find ingredients, and you craft those into potions. And that seems to be the main hook of the game. Looks nice enough, good little art style, has a bit of a kind of Zelda Link to the Past look to it. If if you're a fan of these kind of games already, probably. And if you are, then this is one to enjoy. But yeah, it's another one of those games for us where I just hope it doesn't have a story so that we don't have to beat it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no interest in playing much of this game, but I guess Game Pass doesn't have much of the kind of farming genre on the service, so this will scratch an itch for somebody. So good news on that front, and I think it looks nice enough, but it's just not for me. I just know it's not for me. Speaking of jobs, our next game is Moonglow Bay, where you become a fisherman because somebody you love dies. If this sounds like the most indie game possible, welcome to 2021 Indies.
Yeah, it's the first bullet point on any docket for indie games. Whenever I'm kind of doing a bit of theory crafting for new indie games, your first bullet point's got to be dead loved one, because otherwise it's not an indie game if you don't have a dead loved one. It's just, yeah. Look, I mean, I briefly talked about this earlier when I was commenting on how they spent half an hour with these poor developers asking them every aspect of their game, and I said it then. I like fishing games. I'll probably enjoy doing a bit of fishing in this game. I'm not immediately sold on the art style. It's kind of got that voxely look to it, a bit of Minecraft. Looks quite a lot like Riverbond, which was a game that was in Game Pass up until about half a year ago. That kind of look. It's fine, I guess, but doesn't do a lot for me. And yeah, apparently you're just going to do some fishing. Everyone in the town is scared of fishing because something spooky went on, or like rumors have spread that may or may not be true about accidents that have happened involving the fishing. And throughout the course of about 10 to 12 hours, you're going to figure that out while you catch some fish. I mean, I don't know. Seems like an inoffensive game. Seems like something that will hopefully be just a relaxing, easy playthrough. I'll probably have a reasonable amount of enjoyment just catching some fish. But other than that, I don't know. It sounds like all the dressing around the fishing is just, like we said, just indie 101, right? Just you got to have a dead loved one. You got to have some spooky stuff, some scary stuff. It can't just be fishing. I don't know. I think it'll be fine though.
Yeah, I always get red flags when somebody comes up with a perfectly enjoyable idea that you come to a town which has stopped fishing for whatever reason. That's a pretty cool idea. That's a fun hook. You've got your hook. You don't then need to kill somebody. Somebody has got to sit indie developers down and tell them that not every emotional story involves the death of a loved one. You can come up with other ideas. Just the rebirth of a town would have been a nice hook enough. That's nice. That's sweet. You've got the hook. You don't need to kill. Stop killing so much, guys. Seriously. What's wrong with you? But look, this is set in a cool little coastal Canadian town. It looks very sweet. The voxel art style, I'm not keen on it either. It kind of reminds me of The Tourist. It won't be anywhere near as good as The Tourist, which was a sublime game. This is going to be a bit like Animal Crossing, with a bit of fishing and a little bit of, ooh, what's happened to my dead mate. So, that'll be nice. But I can't say, I just can't get on board with this anymore. I'm so sick of this. And, trying to pretend that I have to care about these stupid dead people all the time. It's so annoying.
Oh, if you clip that, we could be made to look real bad. But yeah, I agree completely, man. It's just, it's just so route one. It's like, oh, we want some emotional heft in our game. Just kill an unnamed character that the player never met. Like, why? I don't know.
I mean, the best part is I saw it in the trailer. You pick which loved one you want to die. I mean, how sadistic is that?
Oh,
you literally choose the look of the person who's going to die within 10 minutes. That's bloody crazy. That's sociopathic, you psychos. I saw your 30-minute interview and you had dead behind your eyes, because that's weird as heck. Can you imagine
a world where a young kid's kind of playing this game upstairs, and he comes downstairs for some tea, bit of food, and his parents are like, "Oh, what you been up to today?" And it's like, "Oh, I decided to design the person that got killed, and so I made I wanted the person who died to look like this, so I made them look like this. I made them look like Dad, and then we killed him." It's like, oh, okay. Probably gonna maybe uninstall that one when you go to sleep. Yeah, mad.
Brilliant. You gotta love it. Okay, next game, which is Narita Boy. Now, this is coming to Game Pass next week, and we will be playing it and reviewing it. This is an 80s side-scrolling action game. There's a lot of these in this pixel kind of style. It looks kind of fun, to be fair. Seems to have a good little hook to it in that you're within a video game. It's Tron. I don't know why I'm trying to kid anybody. They've created Tron. They've decided to make a game within a game. And that's lovely. And it should be fun enough. But I can't say I'm seeing anything outrageously unique about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. It's, it's meant to be set in the 80s. Apparently, you're playing the hit game on this fake console that the game has created. And, the game is you playing that game. As you said, it's Tron. So, yeah, I don't know. It could be fine. It's got a reasonably nice aesthetic to it. It's got that kind of typical synth-wavy kind of 80s musical vibe to it. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm interested to see how this one plays out in action, because I can't quite tell from the brief snippets of gameplay whether it could either be quite cool or it could be obnoxious, basically, and I don't know which it is right now, so we'll see. I mean, it's out next week. It's coming straight to Game Pass, so we'll have some complete thoughts on this one next week.
Yeah, we don't have long to wait to see where we go with this one. I think my favorite part of this is that the main villain is called Him, which just reminds me of the Powerpuff Girls. The villain which was in that. So I'm
Yeah, all right.
sincerely hoping it's the power. If this is a Powerpuff Girls crossover, I didn't see coming. So let's hold our breath on that one and talk about our next game, which is Nobody Saves the World. Now, this may sound like a fairly generic kind of game, but it's done by the Guacamelee devs. So there's a little bit of pedigree behind this one. This isn't just some no-name studio. These guys have put out some good titles already.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this looks really, really cool. As you said, Guacamelee devs, so they got some good pedigree for, the Guacamelee games they're consistently good, right? They don't raise the bar beyond that, but everything in them is solid. There's no real obvious mistakes to them. So, I like the studio, and I think this has potential to be easily their best game. I think this looks really cool. So yeah, basically this is a game where the world's pretty much going to end and the hero people vanish, and you're kind of just this weird little nobody guy, but he basically learns the ability to transform into all kinds of mad things to help him fight. So you kind of go through these top-down dungeon areas, and maybe you'll be a rat at one point and you're gnawing people. Next thing you find, you can you can combine the abilities from the rat with other people you get to be. So now you're a horse and you can kick people, but you can still do your rat skills. And then it just goes into mad stuff. Like some of it's, completely by the books. You can be like an archer or like a big strong man, or, there's a ghost, which is pretty fun. But then like one of the main characters they showed off a lot in the gameplay was just like this kind of cut rate, like birthday party magician looking man. And like he attacks by basically like throwing his cards at the enemies, and apparently the value on the card dictates the amount of damage it does. So you want like a good high card to hit the enemies. And he pulls rabbits out of his hat, but sometimes he pulls out a white tiger instead, so the tiger attacks people. And I think that looks great. I love the look of that. I think it's really clever. It looks really like funny, and it's going to keep you guessing as you play through the game with all these different combinations. Apparently there's a load more than the ones I just mentioned. And I'm quite excited for this. I think this looks really fun.
Yeah, I think this looks great. It seems to have kind of nailed its sense of humor. Even just from the trailer itself, it seemed to be funny, but in a normal way rather than a cloying way that a lot of games can be. It seems to just be naturally amusing. Transforming into a rat is naturally funny. So, it seems to have got the idea that transforming into these unique characters and forms and being able to combine skills together is inherently fun and a clever gameplay mechanic as well. I think this looks really cool. And the idea that it's coming quite soon as well, they seem to be teasing that this might be out sooner than we think, is pretty cool. Yeah, looking forward to this one, like the Guacamelee games. So, yeah, I'm pretty hyped for this. I don't think it'll be anything better than a 7, but there's not wrong with a good, enjoyable 7 out of 10 video game, let me tell you. Let's go on to our next one, which is Omno, which is, I don't know, man, what is this? This is Rhyme? Kind of looks a bit like Rhyme.
It's kind of Rhyme, bit of Journey, right? It's it looks quite nice. Apparently this is a solo dev project, which always impressive when you see some of the stuff that a single developer can do. And it has a good aesthetic to it. Looks like a kind of basic 3D adventure with some simple puzzles in it. You're going to travel around this world through a variety of different settings. There's like desert areas, snow areas. There's bits with like crazy big floating buildings. And you're just going to go around, do some puzzly stuff. It looked like it had some quite like reasonably slick movement. There was those parts of this where he was on some kind of like hoverboard looking thing, and he was like just skating around, and that gave off the Journey vibes, like the way you just glide around in Journey. So I don't know. This might be good, but at the same time, it's hard to look at it and not just see those other games we just listed. It's not massively standing out for me on its own.
Yeah, it screams a little bit derivative, but as you said, the trailer did give a little bit glimpses of hope. The transversal did seem pretty good. The platforming seemed pretty cool. The world itself seems pretty well realized. There's stuff to like here. It looks like it's going to take us on an enjoyable journey. Hopefully one which doesn't outstay its welcome would be my main thing. I think this game needs to be quite a short experience to hold my attention. But then again, I think all games now should be a short experience due to this challenge. We'll also say, love the fact that the solo developer is called Mankey. What a guy. A Pokemon making a video game. Fantastic.
Yeah, Mankey's known for being quite angry as well. So like to actually manage to keep his emotions in check long enough to make a video game, that's impressive.
Good for you, Manky. Anyway, let's move on to our next title, which is Recompile. Now, this game is utterly gorgeous to look at.
Yeah.
Let me just say from the start, this game looks stunning. Now, it describes itself as Metroidvania inspired. That always puts big warning lights up, but the art style's so good here, and the idea that it's going to be a hacking kind of game as well. This looks like it could be a bit of a dark horse out of this entire selection of games.
Yeah, I think this is a very striking game. As you said, it's kind of billing itself as a hacking game, but I think realistically, it's basically a very fast-paced 3D action fighting game, and your character is pretty much inside the computer or whatever. You know, you are the hack that's happening, and yeah, I don't know. This just looks really good, man. I think some of the movement and the kind of inertia of the character flying around in the trailer, you can just tell it looks well put together. You know, it looks like you're going to have a lot of freedom to just zip around at a really fast pace. There was parts where there was some shooting that looked fine, and then there was a lot of parts where you were basically doing like Sonic the Hedgehog spin attacks into enemies, and that looked like it worked pretty well too. So yeah, I don't know. This looks like a good fast-paced action game. I'm reasonably excited for this one. I think this could be, as you said, one of the dark horses here.
Yeah, I think this looks really good. Really looking forward to this one. Looks like it's got a good fluidity to its attacks and movements. Look, that's what you always want in an action game. You want that fluidity, and it looks like it's nailed it off the bat. So yeah, pretty hyped for this one. Looks pretty damn good. Our next title is Sable. Now, Sable is almost like a comic book brought to life. It's a stunning, beautiful game. Would it be cruel of me to say it's just going to be Journey, though, isn't it? Like it kind of looks like Journey.
Yeah, I mean, they build this as an open world exploration game set in a desert. So, you know, that's pretty Journey-ish. I mean, Journey wasn't technically open world, but, you know, kind of. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where I don't think I'm going to enjoy playing it, but the art style is really, really something special. Like, in many ways, it's actually a little bit unsettling to look at, like, because it's just like, it has like quite a slow frame rate intentionally to give off this almost like animated or not quite stop motion, but something, you know, something like that feel to it. And it's a really striking thing to look at. Like, I'd recommend anyone to go and check out a trailer for Sable when you get a chance, because it's a really strange one. In a weird way, it actually looks like, and I appreciate this is a horrible comparison, but it looks like if you brought the old Philips CDI Legend of Zelda games to life as a 3D game. Like the art style actually looks like those games did in terms of art style, but it's obviously a complete 3D world that's flowing around you. And it's, yeah, as I said, it's I've not seen anything like it before in terms of visuals. So that alone, you know, it's worth keeping an eye on for that. But yeah, maybe slightly worried that the gameplay might just be another Journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting look, isn't it? It kind of reminds me in many ways a little bit like BoJack Horseman. It kind of has some BoJack kind of vibes to it, and that's a good art style to be aping. Certainly with a more comic booky kind of bent on that. But yeah, no, it looks pretty nice. I'm slightly worried. It's a coming of age tale, and coming of age tales are very hit and miss because they usually fall into derivative kind of storytelling. But hopefully this one doesn't. Hopefully this one has the strength of its art style in its actual game design as well. And we could actually have something really cool here. But I'm excited to play this. I think this is definitely one I've got a good couple of eyes on. I've also got some eyes on our next game, which is She Dreams Elsewhere. Because this, to me, kind of looks a little bit like if you played Pokemon on as many mushrooms as humanly possible. This game looks mad.
This looks real special. I ended up watching a pretty big deep dive into this morning, and I'm prepared to be impressed by this one. This is like it's almost like if you kind of smushed Undertale with Persona, to be honest. It's you know, it's a solo dev team again. It's one guy who's like 22. I think he started working on concepts for this game when he was 15. Apparently the story is largely based on his own kind of life experiences. It follows a woman called Talia, and she basically loses her job and she's kind of struggling to adapt to adult life. She has a lot of social anxiety and depression, and she eventually ends up being trapped in a coma. She basically can't get out of her own nightmares and wake up. So the whole game effectively takes place while she's asleep, but she still has kind of, even in that context, she still jumps between like settings which seem like they're the real world and she's with her friends and they're kind of keeping her grounded, and then also like more trippy nightmare type areas that she ends up in as well. And yeah, I just think this looks like you know, we when we both raved about Undertale on the show last time out, you know, we We were saying that, it's great when indie development just becomes just someone or a small team of people with an extremely confident vision, and they just control that whole output to get it to be exactly what they want. And I think that's what's happening here. So, it looks really, really cool. If this actually turns out as good as it looks, then I'm excited.
Yeah, this looks fantastic, doesn't it? It really does look weird and off the beaten track, very surreal, fantastic art style. There's a lot to like here. The music sounded fantastic as well. I mean, there's a lot going right here. It also has a strange praise, but I'd say it's the best title of all of these games. She Dreams Elsewhere is a wonderful title. I want to steal it for something before this comes out. It's that good of a title. But yeah, that's damn good. Really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be fantastic. Now, let's talk about Stalker 2 and its teeth.
Yeah, teeth. Yeah, I mean, look, like Stalker 2, it's going to be a big, almost AAA, like maybe AA level, gritty shooting game with survival elements. But we won't talk about that today because they didn't talk about that this week. They just talked about teeth and basically how they've got a special tool that lets everyone have custom teeth so that all the characters in the game will have really realistic custom smiles with different teeth out and different shapes of the teeth. And, good for you. That's great. That's some good realistic, like yellow teeth on these characters. Like that a lot, I guess. They spent the rest of the time just showing off how good the game's going to look. They showed a lot of really high detailed characters and guns, and yeah, cool. I not much more to say right now, really. I'm sure it's going to be a decent game, and I out of everything in this lineup, this is the one that clearly it's got a budget that's getting closer to that AAA budget. You can tell from the visual quality. So yeah, it'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think this is an indie game. I think this one is masqueraded as such. It's just not, is it? They've snuck it in. But nonetheless, those teeth, man. I have the slight fear that they could become a little bit uncanny valley and that they're going to want to have everybody with a big toothy grin.
Yeah.
And that's just going to haunt my bloody nightmares more than like the Chernobyl exclusion zone does. But look, we all know Stalker's a cool franchise, an interesting FPS experience, probably one of the more enjoyable survival games you can play. So I'm kind of excited for this, and it's very cool it's coming to Game Pass day one because there's been a lot of hype about getting a proper sequel to Stalker for a long time now. So yeah, this should be a good one. This is definitely one to keep an eye on, even though I don't really think it made an appearance at this show. I think showing off teeth does not class as a trailer.
No, it doesn't. It can't.
Let's move on to another game, which is The Ascent. Now, if you played Ruiner, which is a top-down twin-stick shooter set in a cyberpunk setting, you've maybe already played The Ascent, which is a top-down twin-stick shooter set in a cyberpunk setting.
Yeah. My first note on this is it just says clearly a Ruiner sequel. I don't know why they're lying, but yeah, look, I mean, it'll probably be quite good. Yeah, like Ruiner was a good little twin-stick shooter. This will probably also be a good twin-stick shooter. Looks pretty gritty. Looks like it's got a bit more going on in terms of like visual effects maybe than Ruiner. Look like there's a lot of explosions and kind of bit more going on, maybe a bit more busy. Ruiner had a thing where it just made the whole game red. So, that they kind of got around effects by just being like red everywhere. But it's probably going to be decent. It feels like the kind of game that will get added to Game Pass. We'll, blitz through it in 5 to 6 hours and, we'll probably give it a decent enough review and then I'll forget it exists about a month later. And that's not necessarily a knock, that's cool. It'll probably give me a fun evening or two, and that's nice.
Yeah, I really like twin stick shooters, so I'm kind of excited for this just because I like the genre. But it doesn't look like it's doing anything particularly special. I will say it seems to be pushing the hardware of the X and S more than most indie games would. Yeah. There's a lot of great environmental effects going on here, a lot of good explosions and whatnot. It looks really pretty in motion. That is one thing to say about it. It's clearly going to have a co-op mode as well. I hope that doesn't make the single-player experience unplayable. I hope they're balanced on both versions. But yeah, I think this looks all right. I'm a little bit worried it's another mega corporation that owns you nonsense story, because there is more to Cyberpunk than that, guys. But anyway, I won't grind on about another indie trope. And instead, move on to our next game, which is Undungeon. Now, this is... it's not for me. Don't fancy it.
You know what? You said you won't go on about indie tropes. Undungeon is like indie tropes, the game. Like, honestly, I watched about 7 minutes on this, and I've played this game. Like it's a roguelike. You play as you pick a character and you have to try and get to the end of the game. And I mean, I feel like I've honestly played it. It looks like it plays exactly like Children of Morta, which is a roguelike that is in Game Pass at the moment. It also looks like it plays quite a lot like Full Metal Furies, which was not a roguelike, but was kind of a 2D action game that left Game Pass last year. I don't know. It just looks completely relentlessly derivative. The only thing that isn't is the story seems to involve like 7 versions of the world have merged together suddenly, and I think these heralds are trying to like sort that out basically. And I think like whichever one actually wins the game, that they'll probably destroy all the others, and then there'll only be one world, something like that. But honestly, I can't stress enough how much this just looks exactly like games I've played. Indie gaming in general, sometimes can be a little derivative. We've touched on other games in this list that, we said Omno looked a bit like Journey, Sable looked a bit like Journey, but this is something else. This literally looks like exactly the same game. so yeah, that's it.
Yeah, if you want yourself a top-down kind of dungeon crawler with some almost hero elements in the sense that you pick a unique character to traverse with, you might get some joy out of this, but the roguelike elements which are already pitching is nah, not for me. I wish this wasn't coming to the service. I can't say I'm looking forward to this at all. Our next game, though, is Way to the Woods. Now, this looks fine. It seems to be a game about a deer and a fawn trying to get home, and it's going to have some light puzzles, but on the whole, it's just going to be a quiet kind of experience. It looks nice enough, to be fair.
Yeah, it looks like it's in some kind of like abandoned, destroyed, like I think it's in like maybe Tokyo or something, and like there's no one there. It's just these deer, and they're trying to get home. And it looks nice enough. Just that concept alone reminded me of a game I love, but it's kind of a mess, which is probably the weirdest game to ever come out of Sony, which is Tokyo Jungle on the PlayStation 3. Just a mental game where you just pick an animal and try and survive in Tokyo for as many years as you can. Like that's all I'm going to go for this. Sorry, Way to the Woods, you do look quite lovely, but I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to tell people to try and seek out Tokyo Jungle if they get a chance. That game is wild.
Yeah, second the Tokyo Jungle, love. That game is bonko madness. I love it. Yeah, play that. Way to the Woods will be fine, but whatever. Let's final one, The Wild at Heart. Now, I hate this art style. I hate it so much. Same. And a lot of games are doing it at the moment, and I can never quite get past it. And I don't know if I'll be able to for this, because I think it looks naff.
Yeah, it's kind of like hand-drawn, but then like almost intentionally badly animated,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is intentionally badly animated. Yeah, I wouldn't want to say that the actual people working on it are doing a bad job. That this is clearly the direction that they intended. But I don't love it, man. I don't know. And the gameplay looks like it's, pretty traditional 2D adventure game. You're going to solve some basic puzzles. It looks like it's largely just stolen Pikmin for a solid chunk of its gameplay. You literally to the point where you find little monsters that of different colors, and you throw them at objects, and then they'll carry that object back for you to places, and you have to throw a number of them, and there'll be a number on the object to say how many Pikmin I'm just gonna call them Pikmin, how many Pikmin are needed to carry it. You throw them at enemies and they'll fight them. That's all literally just exactly Pikmin. So this is a 2D Pikmin in a kind of disappointing art style. Like, I've got nothing else to say, really.
Yeah, I mean, Pikmin's a good game, so we'll hope it takes enough of the good game elements of Pikmin to be enjoyable. I also noticed a power-up where you hoover up coins using a vacuum, so clearly somebody at the dev team has also played Luigi's Mansion. So clearly a big fan of Nintendo properties, I'll give them that much. And my final criticism for this game, The Wild at Heart is a terrible, terrible title. Wild at Heart has been used at so many different forms of media over the course of our sodden existence that it's almost uncountable. You can't just add the in front of it to try and get away with the fact you've made the most bland title possible. Mainly because The Wild at Heart sounds even worse. What the hell is that? Such an unnecessary the. Just call it Wild at Heart and accept you'll not turn up on any Google searches, you idiots.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't work at all. Like, it's the only, I mean, you can't just add it's the stupidest name I've heard since that company added project to everything, like Project Octopath Traveller. They at least had the sense to remove the word project. So yeah, not got a lot of positives about this one. It's maybe it'll surprise me. I don't know. Pikmin's fun. Maybe if this harnesses the elements of Pikmin in a fun way, it might be an enjoyable enough game. But it's kind of starting from a bit of a losing position just because I really don't like the look of it.
Yeah, I mean, these are all the games, all 22 games, all coming to Game Pass day one. Some of these games look pretty good. Why don't you check out some of the trailers yourself? Let us know what you think. Tell us which ones you're looking forward to. Maybe you're looking forward to some of the ones we don't like the look of. Tell us why. We'd love to know. We always like to hear from you. So if you do have any thoughts on it, hit us up.
All right, then. So that's the end of this week's news and the end of the show. If you want to catch us in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at Beat the Sheet. We're always posting the latest games leaving Game Pass or new editions on there. So it's a good place to keep up with that kind of news. And if you want to contact us, you can find us at beatthesheetpodcast@gmail.com. Or if you want to follow our YouTube channel, you can always jump into the video version of the latest episode and just write some comments under that. That's always a great place to catch up with us. We'll be keeping an eye on that and we'll be sure to comment back. So if you have any thoughts on this, this big list of indie games and stuff, just put them in there and we'd love to talk about it. So until next time, I'm Andy Wood and I am still at 68% complete on the sheet.
And my name is Josh Stevenson and I've crawled up to 58% of the sheet by about 0.001 or something. Nice. It's a tiny percentage, but they all count, big boy.
Yeah, sure we do. I'm sure you'll be falling back below next week, but nonetheless, it's nice for this week. Right then, well, thanks a lot for listening this week, guys, and we'll catch you next week.